Hi, welcome to Fashion First by Grazia and Femina. My name is Ekta Rajani and I'll be moderating this session. It's very close to my heart and it's with some people I admire tremendously, so I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. I'm very excited to be with this panel that I'm going to shortly introduce for multiple reasons. We have a decade or so of working together, having the most amazing conversations, and while we are flung in different parts of the world, it's lovely to come together like this. So I'm going to jump into a very quick introduction. It's going to be very brief because it's a tight session. And for anyone who needs more information, you can Google them. These are famous people and you can get a ton of information on them online. So jumping in, we start with the ladies first. Bandana Tewari is a lifestyle journalist and sustainability activist who writes for the business of fashion extensively on a variety of topics, from indigenous made-by-hand economies in India and Indonesia to transgender and LGBTQ representation in fashion. She is a special advisor to the Copenhagen Fashion Summit and sits on several national and international advisory boards. The label Urvashi Kaur is one of the foremost Indian brands that is the part of the sustainability movement in the country. From successfully embodying the global ideology to putting in place strict zero waste policies and constantly looking at ways to minimize carbon footprint, the label has evolved and grown steadily over the last decade. Himanshu Shani founded the brand 1111 that is based on the principle of the Khadi way. 1111 represents a continuous quest for mastery. It has consolidated its roots in the luxury space while emphasizing on creating links between farmers, weavers, natural dyeing, and block printing traditions. Himanshu is also the co-founder of Kora Jeans, which was founded in 2015. It's a customized khadi denim brand and a conscious choice for denim lovers. So without further ado, we jump deep dive into the first question. And the question is, what does sustainability mean to you? And given that we were all part of the common industry practices in the business of fashion, where did you see your journey beginning? At what stage working within the fashion business did you see your journey towards a more conscious approach beginning? So Bandana, you can go first.
Sure. For me personally, sustainability is about humanity, which takes into account environment and people. And I know it's a big umbrella brand. We all know that there's so many ways of approaching sustainability, which is wonderful because there's so many different facets that need to be covered. And some are really good with technology and innovation. Some are good with cultural sustainability, social. But for me personally, because it's such a personal journey, it started out because I moved to Bali and you're surrounded by nature. You have your ear to the ground, literally. And so I like to talk about sustainability now more as a spiritual practice because of where I am. And so that started my journey.
Lovely. And Urvashi, for you?
For me, really it comes down to, as a brand, it's all about being as mindful as possible, but being as natural to, it's not something that came back then. I think I was very, it was really more about what I was exposed to as a child growing up, traveling the width and breadth of the country with my parents. My dad was in the army, so it was very natural for me to, then when I began my fashion journey, to sort of integrate everything that I had grown up seeing in a lot of the rural parts of India, and just being exposed to this textile wealth that I was just, that to me was the starting point of embedding, integrating, Indian textiles and learning, and just it's really been a journey of learning for me, but doing something that is very natural. I think having led a very bohemian life, traveled so many, I've been to 12 schools in 12 years of my schooling life. So just that bohemian attitude of creating something that was effortless, something that was natural, great to the skin and feeling comfortable, and creating something that was more close to my roots, something that came naturally. So with that, I've just sort of wanted to put as much effort in trying to find those ways of being ethical, trying to put policies together, trying to create a business in fashion that is as mindful as possible.
Thank you, Urvashi. Himanshu, for you?
I mean, sustainability, it's a kind of a very long and big word, and it has hundreds of things, and people have taken in various ways. I mean, for me, in a simple way, I would say is to be conscious of whatever we do. And this is something came to me from my studies, so how I was educated in design, and it began from there. And when I was in Italy, when I was doing my master's, and I studied there in 2003 and worked there as a consultant with various brands. And then when I came across the whole idea of what is made in Italy, and I keep questioning why that has such a big name in the world, and I wanted to question why made in India doesn't have the same impact. And this is when the whole quest of finding what the real made in India is. And from 2005, which is when actually I started working with various Khadi Gram Udyogs in the country. And even today, they have those files of whatever we were doing. And that's where I learned how they were doing things. They live in a certain ecosystem, things, how it is made. They've been practicing some things which have been age old. They've been innovating in those practices. And this kind of build the whole conscious understanding of how to design and how to make it is. And from 2009, when we started our own brand, we kind of embedded this idea into it. And since 2011, we are 100% trying to practice things towards it. So like doing dyeing, which is 100% natural. All our cottons are hand spun. Today, even 50% of our cotton is organic cotton. So all these practices kind of keep getting into it, and we're trying to find the answers of how we can trace it all the way from the seed level to the final making of the product.
Wonderful. So the next question is, I think for anyone who's a regular shopper, we're from the business and we have some exposure to the subject. We have interest in understanding how fashion can become a little bit more conscious. It's something that we tend to read and talk with our friends and colleagues. But for someone,
I think.
conscious fashion, how should a consumer go around beginning their journey?
Sorry to jump in here, Ekta. You'll have to just repeat this, your question or your sentence again. We lost the connection.
Sure, I'll just repeat it. Okay. So just asking from...
You have to just give a gap of 3 seconds, and then so the cut is clear.
Sure. Sure.
So I'm shutting my mic now. 3 seconds and then we can start. Thank you.
Lovely. Asking a question from a consumer point of view. Let's assume I'm someone who's not really shopped thinking consciously or sustainably. And now I'm hearing all these words coming at me because the press is beginning to talk about it. It's gathering some momentum. What does an average shopper, where do they begin? How do they begin? Let's say that they've just been shopping very regularly and they don't know where to start. Given how complex the subject matter is, given how much there's greenwashing that takes place, where does an average consumer who's interested in the movement start? Bandana?
As a consumer, I think we all need to know that we are extremely empowered by the information that we hold in our hands, because we all have a smartphone now, right? So in the very way that you go online to figure out whether you want to buy a green dress or a blue dress, in the same spirit of enthusiasm, we should be able to research the brands. Today, there's not a single brand that cannot tell you what they're about, what their CSR policy could be. They're beholden as brands to let consumers know. So we need to take personal ownership and deep dive into these brands that we want to buy. And when you see, if it's a flawed system, it's a flawed system, a flawed brand, then you have a choice whether you want to pull your wallet out or not. But as consumers, I think it's very important if we even take it one step before the consumer. As media people, it is our responsibility to be able to sort of detangle this very complex subject into what is malleable for regular customers, regular consumers, right? And so I tend to point to amazing research done in the most brilliant way by, like, let's say, the MacArthur Foundation. You can see the graphs and the beautiful charts, which actually tell you visually that the amount we are buying now is in so much excess, and we are wasting so much that there's one garbage truck of clothes that goes into a landfill or is incinerated every second. Now, just that visual can make a huge difference when someone is going to a fast fashion company and buying 10 t-shirts, which they'll wear once or twice in their lifetime and dispose. So I think we need to work hand in hand, and I'm a journalist, so I feel there's immense responsibility to able to make the customer understand what sustainability means in their regular ways. And, just also encouraging people not to shop so much. #fashion diet. I think it's time that we also inculcate these practices.
Lovely. Thanks, Bandana. Urvashi, you?
I the consumer and marketing my collections as transseasonal. I feel that with the way the cycle and the formats of fashion, everything was geared towards a completely different, the ideals and the goals were really to produce, and just without any understanding of impact of any kind. And for me, it was, if you're creating something that's timeless, that's beautiful, that can be worn 100 different ways. I mean, you've been proof of that, to show how you can continue wearing something that stands the test of time and is beautiful and relevant. Why should you feel the need to put a new collection out there every 6 months, every 3 months? I mean, why should there be so many collections in a year? Why should this pressure be put on brands to completely try to, fall into that format? And we were compelled as brands to fight against this. Has been a difficult journey. Even now, during a pandemic, when I reach out to stores and I say, hey, this is a collection, it is something that it is from something that was created last autumn, but it's still very relevant. It still is very appropriate, season appropriate, and appropriate for the consumer. Why cannot we be allowed to put that collection on the store? Because they feel, oh, they've seen it. Just because somebody has seen it. So that's where this whole change and the digitization opens up new avenues for designers and consumers alike. I think designers have, as Bandana put it very rightly, the responsibility of being as transparent as possible and measuring their impact through some metrics. And the more we learn about it, the more we can put that into practice and inform our consumers, inform the people that want to buy the brand. And today, this new generation really does believe that they are really watching and they are savvy. They're tech savvy. They know how to research and pull out anything that doesn't hold true. If somebody is trying to greenwash, they can very well figure that out and through more research and know. And they will shift their loyalties to a brand that is doing real work and groundwork. So I think the importance is really on brands if they want to hold on to their clients and if they want to get newer followers and newer audiences, then they will have to put that and they will have to take that responsibility.
Okay, Himanshu, your thoughts?
I mean, as a consumer, I would, even when I look for things, which I keep looking for new things around and what people have been doing across the world. I mean, I would definitely, there are ways where we are approaching a product and a brand, and today's world is so much digital, and it starts from this visual, or it starts as a content, right? So there are different ways when I get attracted to a certain part of it through Instagram or through other social media channels or through mailers. And one, as a consumer, I would like to know more about it. So if it is a visual which is attracted to me, so is it the design part of it? Is it the philosophy behind it? Is it the content? Is it the consistency behind it? So it is something to be a little bit read about, a little bit to research about it and to know more about where they're coming from, because it will be a holistic approach at all different platforms, which will start telling them what is the real part of it. Because visually, even today, it can be very well, presented, and it can defeat the idea of what it is. So it is important to know a little bit more. It's not to dive deep into consciously and to know a lot more about it, because it will take its process. But once a consumer start questioning it, they will start getting answers with those brands. And that would be the first thing, to start just knowing a bit more about whomever you shop with, what it is. And then when you're getting a package or anything, what you shop, then you will know the whole nuances about it. So from the product, from the packaging, all aspect of it, which will also start telling you where they're coming from. The other thing is that as a brand, we want to trying to more concentrate on doing things which are longer. One should use it, for a various season. It's not a season centric. It is not a gender centric. So it is gender neutral and something which you can wear anytime, even after 5 years or 10 years, you would like to open it and get into it. Something which ages beautifully. And this is something as a brand we want to keep working on. And as a service also, as a brand, there is a new an interesting an online platform which is coming up, and they're planning to give a service to amend a product, lifetime. So they want to give that kind of service to all the consumer, and this is something we, as a brand, we would like to look into it, how we can bring that back, so we can keep fixing that product. We want them to wear that again. Even in our bandhnis, we've been doing that. Someone's bandhnis kind of flat opened up, we rebandhni it and we give it back. So we're trying to find ways of how we can give that customer service back again to the consumer. So it's a holistic thing which a consumer should kind of look at, and which they will get an idea on if they want to start interacting with the brand.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely.
Add something here.
Yes, please.
Add something here. I was just thinking about, now, of course, we're consuming so much content online. It's more likely now that there are going to be less magazines, for sure. There's no doubt about that. I just feel what an opportunity to change the language of fashion and how it has been reaching out to customers thus far, right? So whether you're going to social media or you've got magazines in your hand, we've taken such a Western approach in India to understanding fashion that we literally have just followed the ramps in Paris and Milan, etc. right?
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful opportunity to rejig, because this will then allow a new creativity in content where we get to see how authentic a brand is, because you are actually capturing the essence by showing us, let's say, the process, not just the product, right? That you're giving back to the community of artisans that you're working with. I mean, this is an incredible time for storytelling, which is authentic. And I think that's the kind of value that the customer will obviously engage with eventually, because even the customer wants to feel good about what you're buying, what they're buying, right? And we want to believe in the story, because we've been hoodwinked for far too long. And I don't think the customers will be kidded around for too long.
That's a wonderful point. I see it happen. I see it happen in small steps now. But of course, I think there has to be an exponential change, which hopefully will happen the more we push this. So just taking that question to the next stage, let's say a customer is trying to, find out, it's he or she is taking their time, they're doing a little bit of online research. In your experience and exposure, what are some of the touch points or some of the new categories of identity? Like we have GOTS as a certification, or, what are some of the things that they can look for or ask for? Just top of the head, maybe 2 or 3 points that they could be looking for or asking for that gets them started with the questioning. Maybe.
Well, who are they asking? Because it's a whole history.
It could be a store. It could be a designer on Instagram, a direct message. I mean,
it goes to how much change is required in this business, right? Because you have to educate the store managers now.
Right.
Tell them what's the difference between saying, is it eco or is it organic or is it green that happens to look healthy?
Right.
So I think, I just feel the onus is on us, because we're the ones wearing the clothes, we're the ones spending the money. There is no reason why I should not find out why an organic fabric is called an organic fabric, or if organic is eco at all.
Correct.
Because if I just feel that the information is something that I have individually have to be engaged in, because it's there. I mean, it's in the tips of our fingers to find out, what am I looking at? Can we tell? I see half the people in Bali doing yoga, which is the most mindful practice, in polyester.
Correct.
And these are like profoundly intelligent, spiritually elevated human beings. And so where did the blanks come in? Where you don't realize that if you burn your yoga pants, then you can literally have a jug of petrol that you can pour over your head. And how vile would that imagery be? So,
correct.
So I think we need to take personal responsibility. You can't keep waiting for the designers always. So yeah, personal empowerment with knowledge that is at your tip of your fingers. That's your computer, your smartphone. We should be using that.
If I could just add to what Bandana was saying and what Himanshu was earlier referring to, I think the consumer, when they first look at a product visually on Instagram or physically in a store, whatever they're attracted to is the first point where they get interested in the brand. And then if they wish to, if it's purely for aesthetic value that they want to acquire that product, I think those days are gone. I think the new consumer, the newer generation, the new age consumer is really looking to know a little bit deeper. And because they're already, the awareness is more heightened for them, they're also getting a lot of information. They have more access to this information as opposed to the previous generations who weren't very mindful of their choices and very consciously looking for brands that have been doing some real work. But I think from a brand perspective, if it's physically in a store, like Himanshu said, that, you can talk about it. You can, whether it's in your packaging or it's in your, so even in a tag, I was just in Suffrages the other day, and what they've started is a lot of the green brands in UK have this tag that comes along with it. Now, one can go a step further where the brand can actually mention what about them, what specific aspect or goal have they incorporated or integrated into their policy. So that ways the consumer is a little more aware of that, it's not an all encompassing, that they are just incorporating one aspect of it or two aspects, whichever, whether it's, let's say, natural dyes, or it's, handcrafted, or it's, created ethically through fair trade, all of those. I feel that is one way of introducing that information through communication and messaging by the brand. And consumers can actually just ask whatever's at the top of their mind, and just, they're, I think, curious. They're very, very curious to know deeper if they are really attracted to it and want to know more.
Himanshu, I know you as a brand started your button. Could you maybe talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, I'll come to that. I just wanted to say that, as I was saying earlier, I think it's the consumer will have to just see the approach of the brand, and if they're questioning of things of consciously of what it is, then, and that's when they will start getting the answers. We are kind of being conscious of whatever we eat. It has been a time to be conscious of what we wear. So, and that's where it will start beginning. I mean, people will write tags, people will put things, but we don't know. We don't know what is it. So it's a holistic side of it. One will have to just read more, if that is the step as a consumer you're taking. So there's an interesting one quick story, I would say, in like even this whole organic cotton and what Bandana was saying, there is it organic or not? I mean, as a policy side, also there are things which needs to be required, which will even help consumer more, because why we even call a cotton, as an organic? Cotton means organic. So it should be rather pesticide cotton, and then you have a cotton. But it's actually we're saying organic cotton and a cotton. So
right.
If that simple change will even start doing a lot of drift into it. We as a brand been working a lot on traceability side and trying to understand where things are coming from, and that was just for our internal approach of trying to question where things are coming from, and that became a process in our sourcing and manufacturing aspect, and which were interesting stories to share, where it is, who is the farmer and where it is. And this we've been doing last 5 years as a complete traceability from the farm to the final makers. And we have recently built a technology where we are able to tell the story of each and every piece. So if you have one of the 1111 product, and through an NFC technology, you will know the real maker behind that piece. So it will take you straight to who is the farmer, or who is the dyer, or who is the weaver, or who is the tailor, in terms of time and date. So it's not a blockchain, but it is actually of that individual piece we're talking. So this is something, it took us 4 or 5 years to build it. So we've just built that whole technology, and we're going to launch that slowly into the retail market. So
yeah. I think that's where technology and grassroots level design is coming together quite interestingly with steps like this.
It's a kind of a very interesting contrast. The most indigenous thing is going to use the fanciest technology to tell that story. So we don't know. We will see how it goes. Yeah.
I mean, Patagonia is a great brand.
Right, exactly.
If you go onto their website, I mean, as soon as you open it, it'll be elect climate, something about climate believers, or the ones who impact climate policy, basically. But it comes up straight up, and almost every product that they sell will tell you what their carbon footprint is, right?
And they even in 2011, so Patagonia came up with this whole thing of a tag on the garment in 2011 that, don't buy this product. I mean, only buy it if you really, really need of it. Otherwise don't buy it.
Yeah.
That's the other side of it, that their turnover increased after that. Yeah.
That's usually the case.
Reverse psychology as a case study.
Oh, it's a little bit more than that. I think for many brands, I just felt that for many brands, the more transparent they have been or can be will lead to more successful businesses in the future, because people just want to now, everybody's come to this collective understanding that if you have to spend, then you would much rather spend where you know exactly where it's going and how that, has been produced and who's behind that, and that there is a value chain that is, there's value and there's respect at every stage given to recognition, given to everyone, and it's a collaborative process. So I think people really do want to spend money on those brands that really focus on embedding and integrating all of these aspects into their policies and structures,
Also,
And,
I would like to point out that especially for the benefit of designers who are, implementing sustainable practices in their businesses, I think as customers, we need to acknowledge that to be a sustainable brand is a thing of value. So if we have to pay more for a sustainable brand, then so be it. We are saying buy less, but buy things of value that you're not going to card, that you can pass down. Because the fallacy that I hear this all the time with regular folks who are not in this sort of, as spokespeople for in the sustainable world is like, oh, I would love to be sustainable, but it's expensive. I'm like, hell yes, it's expensive, because the processes take that much more time. To transparent is, it takes more money perhaps.
Absolutely.
And so I think we as customers need to understand why something that is sustainable could be more expensive. And we should be buying that and buying less of it.
It's an interesting, this is something, just add quickly.
Yeah, I wanted to add.
Consumer, if you're buying something at a certain price point, it's very simple to consumer to know that a retailer will definitely take at least half of that money.
Yeah.
Whoever the retailer is, or even more. So 60% or even 70%. So 50% is bare minimum. Now, if you left with that 50 or 60%, you're talking about the brand's margin, and then you're talking about the whatever the manufacturing cost is. So if you're paying $1,000, so that's what is going to the artisan. If you're paying $2,000, so that is what is going. So this is also something understood. If you're getting something cheap, you also need to question what that maker would have got.
Yeah. But on the other side is also a lot of brands that do want to go, do want to be sustainable, do want to, do as much, involve as many policies and practices, but sometimes they find themselves they have to compromise, and that's where it really, affects in their journey. I mean, when they have to compromise and make do with something simply because they need to match the price that is expected by the customer, or that has been the norm, that, Pret or clothes made out of khadi shouldn't really cost so much. They don't have that fashion quotient or value attached to it, or the fact that, this is only for this season, so why should I pay that money? So a lot of these considerations for brands back in the day, impacted, and I will continue to impact, for them to survive, to choose and to invest in sustainable practices, and to make sure that they're willing to commit to that line. It's really a difficult, it's very challenging. And so I think the awareness and the knowledge and media can play that role in, pushing the idea that you might have to pay a premium for something that's been made with so much love, and the processes behind it, and the hours that have gone for it, and that it is ethical to the processes involved in that creation.
I think that was the point Bandana was making, that I think as consumers, if we raise our own bar in understanding that we shop less, but we shop a well-made product and we pay a certain price for it, we should, the cool factor that we find in fashion comes from understanding the value in the product, as opposed to pure design.
I mean, look how quickly the slow food movement took over the world, right? We are so careful about what we put in our bodies now. Organic farmers market and what have you. I mean, you're paying a premium for organic food, right? Never said and done, it became a worldwide movement to eat healthier. And of course, it was about paying more to be eating simply. So I feel the slow fashion movement is something that also needs to pick up. And it is no different from, I don't see it very different from if you're ingesting good food, which is within your body. There's no reason why we shouldn't be wearing clothes mindfully that is on our bodies. So I think it's sort of a mind shift, a heart shift that is required, which for me, sitting here in Bali and contemplating really is becoming a philosophical issue. I know for people like Himanshu and Urvashi who've been on this journey for such a long time, it probably started from a philosophical point of view and a perspective. But for individuals like me, and if you look at customers, if we start looking at it from an activist point of view, and this for me is so important because we all are activists. We don't have a choice anymore not to be an activist. And I just recently gave an interview somewhere and I said, we don't have a choice. It's not about a choice. Activism is our birthright now.
Yeah.
And we need to see this sort of activism in fashion, where we are activist consumers and activist designers, activist co-creators, whichever way we want to be in business.
I think there's a couple of things, if I can say, if we're not out of time.
We may be, but so I'll request you to make it brief so I can ask the two questions
No.
I have.
If we have time, I'll get back to it. Yeah.
Okay. So I know that we often don't think about this as much, and we are talking about the product that we're buying, but there is a parallel conversation on packaging. And in a digital world, it's actually become much more of an issue on the table because people are buying everything online and it comes to you maybe twice and thrice over packaged. So as brands, as a sustainability activist, what are your thoughts on, changes that could happen in that space? Because I've heard one where a brand was saying, I don't want to digitally print on my packaging because that's just extra ink on, the product. So they reduce the branding and minimize it just so that they're using less ink on the packaging that comes to you. That was their step. They can't eliminate the packaging, but they're eliminating the branding, the aggressive branding on the material, So I mean, any thoughts on the packaging issue in a digitized world where everyone's shopping online now?
I think no, sorry, Bandana.
No, go ahead, because I think I've tapped a bit. I'll join in last.
No. It's okay. We'll follow.
It's okay. We can flip the order. Urvashi go. Then Himanshu gets sandwiched for this one, and she.
So I think we're now designing our packaging, going forward, and we're trying to find, recyclable materials that can be incorporated and minimize the quantum of the packages involved, and figuring out we've been using a lot of waste that we generate, and just reusing that as form of packaging as well. But it depends, shipping internationally, shipping domestically within, so there's all of these considerations, but we're trying to do whatever we can in terms of, finding appropriate, suitable materials that are not going to further add and are just going to be pulled out of something that is already created and just recycled. But I think it is a growing concern. It is a concern that needs to be looked in by everyone. That's been something we've been trying to do and trying to get to.
Himanshu?
Oh my God, packaging is a disaster. It is a disaster because, and because of this whole online thing, it is even worse disaster. Mia was also, we were talking about it and we were questioning this whole thing that how can we make the packaging more beautiful to be reused? And it is about investing more into that and making it more and more expensive and more, because there are so many boxes you get and then you don't know what to do with it. Even a corrugated box is made out of a recycled paper, but still you cannot recycle that box. What are you going to do? It's keep stuffing them. The tapes which are used are nowhere anything to do with recycling. They don't even exist in India. So I have been importing the tapes from across the world and it cost us a bomb. There is no availability of 100% degradable, the corn bags, for shipping. They're not existing in India. Again, I have to import them and it's so difficult. So it's a disaster. So we as a brand been trying to use our cotton leftovers and we've been making our own paper, but we haven't yet designed a packaging of it. But we have done all our tags and all our collaterals which goes with the product, which are made out of that. We make even, we have a segregation process of our leftovers. So we have an indigo paper also. So we're trying to do now something around that. But it's a whole design department. It's not only about just production. It's like designing a packaging. So it's not existing. So this is something needs a huge attention, and it has a huge potential of a business, of doing that. If people are ready to pay. So if brand has to kind of participate in paying for it, then only it will happen. So
I just feel it's such an opportunity. You're absolutely right. I'm not a designer. I have nothing to package. But the more I look into like the entire supply chain and where you can make all these incremental changes. So there's the whole concept of design out waste, right? So at the drawing board, you've got to design in a way where you have to design out the waste, which I find quite fascinating. And those are the things that should be taught in schools and design schools and fashion schools. Because I think it was KPMG did a study about a couple of years back. And it's the Global Consumer Report. And it says quite poignantly that people don't go shopping anymore. They are shopping online all the time. So you can't imagine the carbon footprint of your packages going back and forth, because there's approximately 34 million containers that go back and forth around the world with the things that we're buying online. So it is a disaster zone, because that kind of carbon footprint that you think of is something that is unimaginable. Just like we think just being digital doesn't mean there's no digital carbon footprint.
Correct.
There is a footprint. It may not be as bad as fossil fuels and what have you, of course. But just to make people understand that every time you press a button to buy online, the whole process that has to come into place for you to have that beautiful box delivered to you, we should be very mindful of how much we buy.
So it comes back to buying thoughtfully and buying lesser.
Yes.
Because the packaging is, while we are all attending to the product and the change in the product and the evolution of the product, we literally have no answers with regards to the packaging and the explosion that's taking place in a digitized world yet. The conversation on that is still just not even begun in a certain sense.
It's like I just one quickly adding, for even the consumers, it's like in the food industry, which has even stayed a long way for this packaging. If they crack it 100%, that's when the fashion will click in. So we are far ahead, way back. I mean, the one thing is, how people have like in the food that, we don't need the cutlery, so send it without that. So they have these online options. There are various, these options will come, I don't need a fancy box. You can just give me that.
That's a great point.
Safe,
that
you tick on it and you can, you can get that. So if that might be start giving this conscious things of it.
Yeah.
So I mean, these are the things which will start opening up, I think, in the digital world. Where
hopefully sooner rather than later, because the world's gone digital with such an explosion. We need this to happen like now. Yes, I think we're moving towards the end of it. I think time's running out, so I'm going to quickly put. Sustainability is often looked upon from a planet point of view, but there's also a huge people story in it. If you can just, again, as an introduction to, first time consumers who are listening in on this, when we say that something is cheap, it is cheap because there is a lower price on both the resource and the human activity that goes into it. So what can people think about when they think about sustainability and their responsibilities towards the people who make it? So let's go with Himanshu first, because he's been sandwiched and he's been at the end. We should bring him in the beginning now.
Can you just quickly say that question again?
So, sustainability, as we said in the beginning, is so vast a word. There is obviously an environmental aspect to it, but there's also a people aspect to it, a very huge people aspect to it. Just your thoughts on how a consumer can become a little bit more conscious and mindful that when something is very cheap, what's happening to not just the natural resource around it, but what's happening to the person behind it, and why that price point is an important one to consider from a people point of view.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult thing for a consumer to know, because it's not easy to know what would have taken one thing to make, like how we don't know, because these are like invisible thing, the time, the effort, material, XYZ. So, but yeah, I mean, certain basic examples will be, if you're seeing something intricate, then it has to be, if it is done by hand, then it will have that X amount of work. If you see a digital print, then it has an X amount of work. If you're seeing a bandani which is done by hand, it's an X amount. So there are some basics which one can put into it and start calculating, which will give them an idea of where it comes from. Like, for example, we talk about hand woven, and we as a brand talk about hand spun. Nobody looks at hand spun, it is just hand woven, Hand spun is kind of not there. It's an hand woven. But no, it's hand spun. It is like way, way beyond that. So it is difficult. We understand that, because it's still, there is, one has not seen it. It doesn't exist. It's not been around. So it would be just to question, what would have taken to make it. And, people have certain, you have maids and you have caretakers and people working in your household, and the kind of money you pay them and the kind of effort they put behind doing it. And might be those will start answering what it would have taken to make that product. But that is a very big thing. The pricing will kind of tell you where it comes from. What is it? So
if you as designers, I feel, show us a process when you're doing your tie-dye or when you're doing your bandani, and you see how intricate, how time-consuming it is. It's almost like a meditation, because it has to take its own process and the patience to do all of it. Then I think you understand, my God, that one garment, so many hands have to touch it, right? from someone who's spinning the cotton
Yeah.
all the way. And then think about, I just get horrified now more and more every time if there's a fast fashion brand that's selling a t-shirt for $3 and we say it's cheap, someone's definitely toiling, someone's paying for it, and it's obviously countries like ours or Asia or Indian subcontinent. Look what happened to Bangladesh during COVID-19. Handful of top brands wash their hands off their contracts, billions of dollars go down the tube for them. So they're not worried about COVID, they're worried about starvation. That told us directly how people are related to products and the machinery that's in place that deceives us from the reality of the makers, whether they're sitting in a village as artisans or as factory workers in cities. So I think social is a massively important part of sustainability because it goes straight to the heart, especially with big brands, big fast fashion brands. It goes to the heart of human rights. And by the way, also gender, because in these big companies, manufacturing countries, 80% of the clothes are made by women. So it's human rights issues, it's gender issues. So this is where media needs to step in, and sort of decipher this complex language of sustainability.
Right. Urvashi?
I do agree on both and everything that has been spoken of. I think price, not in every case, because in the past, price really hasn't determined how sustainable the processes behind the creation of that garment has been. So I think even price can be deceptive. It's the value that brands can market and push and show has an X value. I mean, you look at all these really big luxury brands that are producing their part of their processes are done in countries like India, Bangladesh, and of course, fast fashion is a different ball altogether. But I mean, luxurious brands that haven't been able to really look into and constructively make changes to improve the quality and livelihood and working conditions of the people that create their embellishments and embroideries and and their textiles, and they don't even give them any recognition. I mean, it's only now that some have, there's a trickle of it, where they're mentioning, oh, this came from India, as what Himanshu said earlier on, that made in India has absolutely no value because neither, these Western global brands that have existed and have been creating their, products in India and in the East have not given any transparency about it and have been selling them at huge prices. So even price doesn't necessarily tell a consumer that this is ethically produced. This brand supports their value chain. This brand is, has certain goals in place. And I think what Bandana said was really, important and necessary is that the media, the role of media, and today media just isn't, the old media. It's everyone out there from celebrities, influencers, anyone who influences consumer behavior and consumer buying should really become more responsible and should make people aware of it and should highlight brands that are taking that extra step, are really investing and are really committed and determined to make changes in their own internal working, and are really doing something for this ecosystem. So I think media plays a big role. The brands have their own responsibility, and consumers, again, need to do their research and dig deeper. But it all, kind of boils down to, I think it's collective effort on all, on all fronts. It's the consumer that leads the brands to take responsibility. I think it's the consumer that really will shake this, to its core, and I think will push them?
I'll just quickly just take a step ahead in the sense of, this whole thing of the recognition, and, now the whole movement of who made your clothes thing has started, and the pictures started coming in, but then so what? You know who made your clothes. Now what? It doesn't answer anything. So because eventually everybody's paid wages. So it's like going even further and trying to find an answer of how are they connected with the brand. What are these? It's a whole holistic approach which will be eventually to be questioned and to be looked at. So is it just these people who have been participating in making it? These are the pictures. These are the ones. It needs to be even more than that. So it needs to question even further up from there, because and now it should be questioned like that rather than tomorrow.
This is the time, because everything's being questioned, and so all the questions are on the table right now. I'm gonna say famous last words for this chat. What do you want to leave the listeners with?
For me personally, to all of you who are listening, personal responsibility for collective change. Because just saying someone is going to do something for you, it's a lazy move. We need to be the change that you want to see in the world. I'm paraphrasing Gandhi, and I believe truly that you need to take personal accountability by what you choose to buy.
Lovely.
I would like to say that, as a country, as a people, we have generations before us have practiced the art of sustainability in some ways. It's culturally, we come from those roots in India, especially, and I think we have to go back and see how historically we've placed such importance and value to those practices, and to handcraft, to everything that's passed down to us from our mothers and grandmothers, and just the value, as Himanshu said, that with everywhere, I'm a big fan of the brand myself, and I own many pieces of their and every time you wear it and every time you wash it, it just gets softer and it just feels better. So I remember when our grandmothers used to give us a sari that dates back to 50 years, 60 years. I mean, you just, if you keep it with that wrapped in malmal and just safeguard it, it's just a pride and joy, a bag that I was given from my grandmother. I think it's about recognizing that we've grown up with this. We have, these are things that we treasure and we've nurtured and we've given value to. We just need to go back to that and realize that that is really the way to reduce this newer concept of accumulation and overconsumption and wastefulness that didn't exist in our traditional communities. We were living as communities and sharing and passing down, and so we need to just go back and just listen to the stories of our grandmothers and our mothers and their histories, and just take pride in that and try to go back to those memories and try and relive it. And I think COVID has kind of given us that little shakedown and really made us think that it's about time that we buy less and we buy more consciously and we rewear and reuse and just pass and yeah. So I would like to just end at that.
Lovely, thank you. Himanshu?
I think it's the right time to reboot and think consciously. That's it.
A man of few words.
That was lovely. I, for one, am so happy that I got to like chat with all three of you in the same frame. So it's made my day. And I hope that for the viewers who are listening, there was something to take away and a little food for thought. I think it's interesting that, you know, magazines like Grazia are now, you know, talking about this. And I think it brings us back to the point that Bandana said, that mainstream fashion, mainstream media need to take initiative and push this dialogue. It will be baby steps to begin with, but as the vocabulary changes, as the mind shift happens, hopefully these little conversations will surmount to a larger movement that we're all very happily a small part of. I think we enjoy it, and that's why we're all here. And thank you so much for your time, and big kiss.
Thank
kiss.
you.
No packaging.
Thank you, Ekta, for leading this.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.